On a Sunday morn, sat a maid forlorn with her sweetheart.
The date is June 28, 1914, Sarajevo, Austria-Hungary. The heir to the throne of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, has been assassinated. With one shot of a gun, a 4-year war was sparked that would end over 10 million lives. And from that war, one of the most notorious peace treaties in history would be signed, the Treaty of Versailles.
Failure of the Treaty of Versailles to uphold its responsibilities to assure Germany can never rise to power again, while still weakening Germany enough to harbor resentment, was directly responsible for World War II and the mass casualties on the European continent 20 years later.
The Treaty of Versailles did not allow Germany to reintegrate into the New World Order after World War I, while at the same time not crippling them enough to start another war. Due to its excessive neutrality, the Treaty of Versailles is directly responsible for the mass casualties that resulted from World War II. At about 10:45 a.m., the Archduke and his wife were both shot dead as a result of an unfortunate turn by their driver.
The assassin is identified as Gavrilo Princip, a Serbian nationalist from Bosnia, dedicated to unifying its minorities.
Upon hearing news of the assassination, Kaiser Wilhelm II, the Emperor of the German Empire, assured Austria-Hungary he would give full support if they invaded Serbia. So they did. Russia, a staunch ally of Serbia, responded with their own mobilization.
Russia was part of the Triple Entente, a joint military alliance between Russia, France, and Britain. France ignored a German request for neutrality.
Germany then declared war against Russia and France, and to invade France, invaded Belgium and Luxembourg. The British Empire, an ally of Belgium, then declared war on Germany in defense of the invaded nation, and so the stage for World War I was set. By 1916, the fighting had slowed under the system of trench warfare. With the quick draining supplies and lowering morale, it seemed one of the great powers was bound to collapse eventually.
The first to do so was Russia.
Russia formally left the war in early 1918 in the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, which seemed to be a major win for Germany. There was just one problem. Germany was starving. Blockades and sanctions prevented them from food and necessities. After an intercepted message sent by Germany to Mexico to invade the U.S., President Woodrow Wilson brought the United States into World War I.
With the United States now fighting on the front lines of World War I by late 1917, German defeat was now a matter of when, not if. On August 8, 1918, the Allied powers began the 100 Days Offensive, a series of final offensive attacks on Germany to end the war.
The first battle was the Battle of Amiens, a critical success for the Allies. By the latter months of 1918, the Allies marched closer and closer. Germany was left with no supplies, all its experienced troops dead, and no reinforcements.
With all of the other Central powers out, Germany was on its last leg as the Entente pushed them back to the original German border.
And so, on November 9th, 1918, faced with a guaranteed crushing defeat and a riot sure to come after, Kaiser Wilhelm II formally abdicated the throne and left for the Netherlands, ending a 300-year dynasty over Prussia. The government sought peace, and so on November 11th, 1918, the armistice was to go into effect, signed inside of Marshal Ferdinand Foch of France's very own railway car. And with that, fighting on all fronts ceased and the fighting in World War I officially came to a close. All that was left was a peace deal.
On January 8, 1918, in a speech to Congress, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson introduces 14 points of self-determination.
Among these points were Point 1, open diplomacy, Point 10, the dismantlement of Austria-Hungary, Point 13, the restoration of a sovereign Polish state, and arguably the most important, Point 14, a new global organization of countries, which would go on to become the League of Nations. The Treaty of Versailles would be signed on June 28, 1919. The Allies now had the responsibility to reintegrate Germany into the world order or remove it completely. The Treaty of Versailles failed at both.
In attendance of the Treaty of Versailles were the Big Four, referring to David Lloyd George, Prime Minister of Great Britain, George Clemenceau, Prime Minister of France, Woodrow Wilson, President of the United States, and Vittorio Orlando, Prime Minister of Italy.
The Big Four made the vast majority of the treaty, with the losing powers having absolutely no say. And the Big Four's decisions weren't always the best option for a long-lasting peace. The Treaty of Versailles, in its terms, largely made a framework for future cooperation, impossible in its harshness or mildness. First of these many terms was army restrictions.
They were also barred from keeping a submarine fleet.
Germany was ordered to completely demilitarize the Rhineland, which bordered France and contained a large part of the German population, leaving them vulnerable to attack. The next term was the War Guilt Clause. Germany was forced to accept guilt of being the sole aggressor of World War I, even though they had just defended an ally as Britain did for Belgium.
War reparations were next. The Allied powers estimated damages caused by Germany to be 33 billion USD in 1921, or about 132 billion Reichsmarks. Economists said Germany could not pay this much money, but the Allies insisted if Germany didn't pay, punitive actions would be taken.
In the dynamic of the Big Four and the Treaty of Versailles, the harshness of the war reparations largely went into George Clemenceau of France's favor. Clemenceau had lived through the Franco-Prussian War and had looked to punish Germany as hard as possible.
On the opposing side of this argument was Woodrow Wilson of the United States. Wilson, under the principles of self-determination, looked to enforce an easier peace on Germany. This left David Lloyd George of Britain as the middleman of the two and often the mediator between two extremes. When asked how he did at the peace negotiations, he said,
However, the idea of David Lloyd George as the middleman did more harm to the treaty than good. The idea of the middle between two extremes being correct is known as the argument to moderation logical fallacy. This is why the treaty was neither harsh nor mild.
The worst part for Germany was territory loss. Poland must be fully restored. Also came Czechoslovakia and Lithuania. The Allies did not care if taking territories were German majority.
Germany lost about 13% of its total land and 10% of its population, given to France were the territories of Alsace-Lorraine. Alsace-Lorraine had a large German community inside of it, with Alsace in particular often being likened culturally to Germany.
To Belgium, Germany lost Eupen-Malmedy, which had been German since the days of the North German Confederation.
Alongside this, northern Schleswig was transferred from Germany to Denmark.
Losses to Poland caused the greatest controversy. Germany lost Posen and parts of East Prussia, with East and West Prussia being completely split apart by the Polish corridor.
Danzig, which was 95% ethnically German, was taken away and named a free city with no local choice.
A great deal of Silesia and Posen, which Germany had lost to the Czechoslovakians, and Poles were heavily industrialized and very wealthy, which took a toll on the German economy on top of all of the reparations.
Germany also lost Memel, part of East Prussia to Lithuania, which had been majority German. According to HistoryState.gov, Germans in the area numbered 68,000, whereas the Lithuanians numbered 54,000. The territory of Memel had never in history been Lithuania.
In addition, the Saarland, an area on the French border which was heavily industrialized, along with the Rhineland essential for Germany's economy, was placed under administration of the League of Nations until 1935.
So what everyone thought who came to Paris in 1919 was they would draw up some terms, they would then present them to the Germans and the other defeated nations, and then they'd all sit around a table and hammer out something that suited everyone. And it didn't work like that.
The signing away of territories was not well coordinated by population and failed to take into consideration the interests of the people living there. Struggling under the inefficient Weimar Republic, Germany struggled to pay its reparations, so began printing lots of money.
Before this, 4 marks was equivalent to $1 US. By 1920, it was 16 times less valuable.
The government struggled so badly with inflation that bread cost over 200 billion marks, yet they didn't fix it.
Because of this, chaos and starvation broke out across the country, and people turned their anger towards the government and the Treaty of Versailles. The people of Germany were desperate for a savior.
The German savior came in the form of a man named Adolf Hitler. After coming home from World War I, he founded the Nazi Party.
Hitler said he had overturned the Treaty of Versailles and blamed the Jews on it.
After a quick coup and 6 months in prison, Hitler found his polling numbers at about 200,000 by 1929.
In 1933, Hitler became dictator after the president's death.
Hitler now began to assert his power on the other nations such as Austria and Czechoslovakia. Eventually, he looked to Poland.
Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister who had appeased Hitler, finally put his foot down and declared war when Hitler invaded Poland.
During World War II, the Holocaust began and concentration camps opened targeting Jews.
By the end of World War II, over 80 million had died, including 6 million Jews.
Tragically, the history of World War II could have been avoided, and that lies in the Treaty of Versailles. If only Clemenceau had gotten his way, and Germany had been divided and split into its pre-unification states, as offered by plans during the time. Or, if Wilson got his way, and Germany got an easier peace and harbored less resentment. Either of these options would have resulted in something other than the mild, neither hot nor cold peace that would be the Treaty of Versailles.
And that peace, the Treaty of Versailles, would be a blueprint for bloodshed.
Sweetheart by her side, through the window pane, she looked at the rain. We must stay home